Welcome again, guys, to another episode of Learn the TOEFL the Easy Way with Teacher Fish. Our video for today will be about the second speaking task of the TOEFL, which is called Reading and Conversation. Speaking Task 2 is the first of 3 integrated tasks of the speaking section. Always remember that you actually have 3 tasks at hand, which are to read, to listen, and then to speak. Be informed that the reading part and the listening part, specifically conversation, will provide all necessary details that you'll need in your response. This means that there should not be any details or information included in your answer aside from the ones that come from your 2 sources of information, the reading and the conversation. In this task, you will first be required to read a short passage, usually an announcement or a notice from one of the departments of a university. It can also be a letter that is written by one of the members of a university. The topic of the reading is always campus-related. Some examples of campus-related topics are a cancellation of class, an announcement about a construction of a new building, or a letter proposing a change in policy. Then, a conversation between 2 speakers will follow the reading. It will be about how the speakers, or at least one of the speakers, feel about the reading and the reasons he or she has for feeling that way. Another thing to note in this task is the time limits involved. Let us first have the time limit for the reading part, which is 45 seconds. Within the given time, you have to be able to read a passage that is typically a paragraph long, at the same time take notes of important details. Then, the conversation between 2 speakers will run for about 1 to 1.5 minutes. Next, for the preparation of your response, you are given 30 seconds. How you should prepare your response will be discussed later on the video. Finally, for the response time, you are allowed to speak for 60 seconds. Remember, in all speaking tasks, anything that is spoken beyond the response time limit will not be recorded, so always make sure that you finish speaking before the limit expires. The next thing that we are going to talk about is what to take notes of when performing speaking task 2. This process starts with the reading part. Before we begin, again keep in mind that in speaking task 2, the reading is inferior, or should I say less important than the conversation, so expect that you'd have fewer details from this part than the conversation part. But, don't get me wrong, guys, being less important than the listening part does not mean that you'd not focus on it. Remember, this is an integrated task, so there is still a need for details from the reading. So let us now learn what details you should take note of. I always teach my students to be very keen at answering 3 questions: who, what, and when. The answers to these questions are the parts of the reading that you have to include in your response. To explain each of them, who answer means the one who authored or made the announcement or the one who wrote the letter. Now remember this, in many occasions the who answer is found on the title. For example, the announcement or notice might have a title that reads, Announcement from the English Department, or Notice from the Campus Security. However, not all titles give you an instant who answer. In this case, often upon reading the first line of the paragraph, you will find the answer to the question. If still, the announcement does not provide you with a who answer, then it is automatically the university that made it. Remember, again, at the beginning of our lesson I mentioned that the task is always about campus life. Anyway, as for a letter, the writer would normally affix his name and the department of the university where he belongs. In this scenario, it is not necessary to use the letter sender's name as the answer to who. There are times that the name of the letter sender is quite difficult to pronounce, that you might even end up mispronouncing it. So to be safe, make use of more general terms such as student, if the letter came from a student of the university, or professor, if it was from a professor. Read the line below the letter sender's name. Most of the time, the position is indicated there. For instance, sophomore student, English literature professor, or head of maintenance department. But, if you are sure that you'd be able to pronounce the letter sender's name, then by all means use it as the who answer. As for the what answer, again remember this is the question that is the most important to have an answer for. And, it is also impossible not to find the answer for what in the paragraph. And so, what answer is the purpose of making an announcement or writing a letter? It is the statement in the reading that informs what will happen. It can be about a mandatory attendance policy that can affect all final grades, or class cancellation saying that the university will no longer offer a particular course due to not having enough enrollees. Lastly, when is, as you might have guessed, the time the announcement will take effect. However, the answer to when depends on the flow of the reading. There are announcements or notices that do not include when the commencement would be. In this case, leave it out. Remember again, since this is an integrated task, you cannot use any information that does not come from the reading. Anyway, if there is a when answer, it may be in a form of an exact date, like, beginning February 25th, or an expression that indicates time such as, next semester, upcoming term, or it can be as simple as, immediately. These are the things that you must include later in your response. Actually, upon reading the first line or at least the first 2 lines of the reading, you will notice that you already have answers for who, what, and when questions. So a common mistake that test takers do is once they have the answers for the 3 questions, they stop reading. Now, I always tell my students not to get hooked with this bad practice. I always tell them, and now I am telling you, the other parts of the announcement provide us with vital information. The latter part usually provides us with the reasons for making such announcement. So what do these reasons serve, you may ask? Remember that this is just the reading part of the task, and that listening to a conversation will be next. During the conversation, one of the speakers will talk about these 2 reasons, so if you have taken note of the reasons from the announcement, even by just taking mental notes, then it would help facilitate better understanding of the conversation. Now for the note-taking process of the conversation part. The first thing that you have to write on paper is again answers to who and what questions. Specifically, who amongst the 2 speakers gives an opinion about the reading and what is his or her opinion about it. Typically, these questions are immediately answered at the start of the conversation. One speaker may use expressions that signal the listener that he or she is giving an opinion about what was read. In this case, you may write down who amongst them did so and how he or she feels about the reading. But there are conversations in which both speakers seem to express how they feel about the reading. So what should you do? If the conversation runs like this, then what you can do is to take note of both speakers' opinions. For example, if the man seems to agree with the announcement and the woman seems not to like it, then your paper might look like this. Vice versa. Also, keep in mind that while still in the process of reading and listening, you will be left clueless as to what the question will ask. The question will only be asked at the end of the conversation and before you start with your response preparation. So it would be safer if you at least write the possible opinions of both speakers. The next thing that you have to note down is the first reason for having such opinion. But again, what if on paper, I wrote both speakers' opinions? Does it mean I have to take note of both of their reasons too? Well, a strategy that might work is to depend on the speaker who has more airtime or longer speaking segment, might be the one asked later in the question. To a certain degree, this helps, but the uncertainty is still there. Remember, in the reading part I told you to at least take mental notes of the whys, or the reasons for having such announcement. This is where they are very useful. The speaker who uses these reasons from the reading, either using it to argue with or to support, is the one that the question will ask. So if you continued reading the paragraph until the end, then you lessen your burden of note-taking details from the conversation and can even focus on the content of the speech of one speaker only. After taking note of the speaker's first reason, you must then take note of the supporting detail that would either explain the reason or an example that would illustrate it. Most of the time, when the speaker uses an example, it is a situation he or she has experienced. At times it is a situation that a friend or someone he or she knows has experienced. Then, you must also take note of the second reason of the speaker. Speaking task 2, especially the conversation part, will always contain 2 reasons for holding an opinion. This may again be the second reason the announcement in the reading part was made. Now for the last detail that you have to listen for, is the example or explanation for the second reason. The same process as the first supporting detail will take effect here. So these are the things from the reading and conversation that you have to have on paper. Let us enumerate them one more time. From the reading, we need the answers for who, what, and sometimes when. And, do not forget to take at least a mental note of the reasons or the whys. As for the details from the conversation, be sure to include who gives an opinion, what the opinion of the speaker is, the first reason for holding such opinion, a statement that supports the first reason, the second reason, and finally, the supporting statement for the second reason. Needless to say, these details will be the content of your response. And so, remember again that you are given 30 seconds to prepare your response for speaking task 2. You might be wondering why the prep time is longer for this task, since all the details you need will be provided by the two sources. Whereas, in speaking task 1, where you need to draw a response from your own ideas or experiences, you are only given 15 seconds to prepare. Now, to clear things out, the reason you have 30 seconds at hand for task 2 is because you have to do multiple things despite having all the details you need. First, you have to organize the details you took notes of. We will focus on this in a while. After organizing the details, you must then paraphrase them. Remember that the TOEFL will not give you a perfect score if you simply copy the details from both sources. So this is where a big chunk of your preparation time will be consumed. Okay. To help you organize the details and prepare your response, here is a template that you can use. Starting with a statement that talks about the reading details. It says, according to the reading, then the answers for who, what, and when. Now, the question for this task will seem to focus on the conversation details only, but no. What I mean is, even if the question tells you to talk about the listening details, do not forget that the task involves a reading part. Do not just disregard the details from it. They must be included in your response. And a little backtrack, the reasons or whys from the reading need not be included in the response. Again, the purpose of the whys is to help you with the conversation part. Anyway, the next sentence in the response is the statement that indicates who amongst the speakers gives an opinion and what the opinion is. This is now the part of your response when you start talking about details from the conversation part. It can be said as, the man or the woman is in favor of or is against the announcement. By the way, learn to adjust your words. The expression that you will use depends on the type of reading you encountered. Again, it can be in a form of announcement, a notice, or even a letter, so play with your words. Next is the first reason of the speaker for holding an opinion. Start the sentence with a transition or an expression that would signal that you are talking about the speaker's first reason, followed by the reason. For instance, the first reason that the man or the woman gives is, then the reason. The first reason statement should then be followed by the explanation that would clarify or the example that would illustrate the speaker's first reason. It can be said like this: he or she explains that, or he or she cited an example, then the supporting detail. So the next sentence of the response is obviously the second reason that the speaker gives. Begin the sentence with a transition or expression again that would give a signal to your listener that you are now going to talk about the second reason of the speaker. So your sentence might again look like this. Another reason the man or woman supports or contrasts with the announcement is, and then the second reason. By the way, in speaking of the reasons of the speaker, it would be better to make use of titles such as, the man, or, the woman. These titles not only makes the response more formal, but also takes away again the rater's impression that you have a limited vocabulary. The simple combination of titles, used to introduce reasons and pronoun substitutes for supporting details, would be better than just sticking with either titles, man or woman alone, or just pronouns all the way. Alright, for the final part of the response, we have the supporting detail for the second reason. So the sentence may sound like, he or she then points out or shares his or her experience about, then again followed by the detail that the speaker provides. So these are the elements of a speaking task 2 response, and the template that we have is how you are supposed to organize the response. Before we end the video, Let us again have a quick review of the parts. Starting off with the statement that talks about the reading details: who, what, when. Then the sentence that contains how the speaker feels about the reading. Next, the statement that indicates the first reason for feeling that way. Followed by a supporting detail sentence that talks about the first reason. The next part of the response is the second reason, and finally, the supporting detail of reason number 2. Remember also that speaking task 2 does not require a closing or summary sentence, like what we have in speaking task 1. Another reminder is to make use of noun-pronoun combination. Lastly, try to substitute the words that you use, especially verbs. So guys, we have again reached the end of our lesson about speaking task 2. I hope that after watching the video, you now find it easier to answer the first of 3 integrated speaking tasks of the TOEFL. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please leave them on the comment section, and I will do my best to respond to them promptly. I have also uploaded other TOEFL lesson videos and TOEFL exercises, so check out my channel. And please do not forget to subscribe, press like, and hit the notification bell so that you'd get informed every time I upload a new video or practice exercises. You may also share this video with your friends and other test takers you know, so that they too can achieve their TOEFL success. And always remember, the TOEFL is not difficult, if you know what to do. With that, see you again on the next episode of Learn the TOEFL the Easy Way with Teacher Fish.